Good evening, distinguished listeners, scholars, leaders, and lifelong learners. You are tuned into Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where excellence meets insight and every conversation is crafted with intention. Today, we welcome a woman whose work stands at the intersection of scholarship, strategy, and transformation. A woman who has spent more than 30 years guiding minds, decoding academic systems, and helping doctoral students reclaim clarity in one of the most demanding intellectual journeys of their lives. Dr. Jacqueline A. Kane, Ph.D., author, architect of academic breakthrough, doctoral success strategist, a national voice for structure, progress, and scholarly empowerment. Her book, The Finished Dissertation, is not simply a resource, it is a roadmap for scholars who need direction, a mirror for those who need perspective, and a strategy for those who are ready to finish what they started. It brings order to confusion, language to frustration, and confidence to a process that often feels isolating. Today, we sit with the mind behind the method, a woman who has turned decades of institutional experience into a framework that helps scholars move from uncertainty to completion. Dr. Kane, welcome to the broadcast, and we are honored to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. So, if you would do the honors of please introducing yourself to the listeners and share who you are as the powerhouse behind this remarkable guide.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I am the author. I am I call myself a doctoral success strategist because my work helps doctoral students step back from the immediate pressures, understand where they are in their situations more clearly, and make informal decisions about what comes next. I shouldn't say informal, informed decisions about what comes next. And as a result of that, I decided that I would write this book, The Finished Dissertation, so that others can think about and see the framework that I've developed to use in helping doctoral students move forward.
I love that. Now, before you finished the dissertation existed, what moment or experience convinced you that doctoral students actually needed a new kind of guidance?
Oh, good question. Well, I have when I was working with the New York State Education Department, one of the things that came under my responsibilities was working with institutions in developing doctoral programs. And I was also involved in evaluating changes that institutions were proposing. And I often met with doctoral students. And of course, in my professional activities aside from my paid work, I often met with in my travels uh, many doctoral students that were really struggling. And I would begin to have a conversation with them. And as I would have these conversations, it was like, oh, there's something that they're missing here. There's something that they need some assistance in moving forward in completing their doctoral program. So when I retired, I began doing some consulting and coaching and decided that actually putting this framework on paper in a book would be able to disseminate this information, put it in the hands of people who are already in doctoral programs, who are considering doctoral programs, for faculty and advisors, for institutions to have this, not only to put the framework out there, but also in a way to give folks a common language for which they can use to talk about the process and what needs to happen next.
Understood. But when you look at the dissertation journey, what do you believe people misunderstand most about its true complexity?
Oh gosh. I think the complexity part of it is that the complexity is not always obvious.
Mm.
The dissertation itself is a document. So a lot of times people are focusing on producing the document as a collection of words on paper. But there's more to the dissertation than actually producing this document. And a lot of times, doctoral students get lost in producing the dissertation as a document as opposed to dissertation, the process. And the process is kind of straightforward, but it has all kinds of little wrinkles in it. And this dissertation process is a very unique process. We kind of think what we know, we know what it is because we have been writing papers all during our academic careers. But putting together a dissertation is a different process. And so trying to make that process clearer, what the steps are, what makes for clarity, what makes for good production. It's like a lot of times you will see an emphasis with people because we are talking about producing a document that, okay, you need to write, you need to write, you need to write. Well, you do need to write, but you need to know what you want, what you need to write. You need to be clear about what it is that you're writing about. And so part of what I do and part of what the framework does is help people think through what is it that I need to do at this moment? Where am I? What is it that I need to say? And it may be that, you step back, you don't do any writing. Or you may do a different kind of writing. You may do writing like I call writing to think, that where depending on your writing preference, some people, they still like pen to paper. Others, particularly those of us, or those of you who are younger, keyboard. You sit at your computer and you type in your keyboard in your thinking so that you can put your thinking out and in a sense organize it, that you don't, the questions that you have, you're able to sort of put them in front of you and say, okay, is that the question I need to answer? Or is there some other question I need to answer? Or is there some information I need before I can make that, before I can answer that question? So there are a lot of things a lot of points in the dissertation writing process or the dissertation production process that it's easy to get stalled, it's easy to get weighed down. And so hopefully some of the things I share in the finished dissertation, some of the framework allows people to doctoral students the opportunity to think better about, be more efficient in how they use their time, be have be able to have conversations with their committee members, for example, about what expectations are, because you're working with a group of people, and sometimes it's the doctoral student's job to manage the committee. And so if you can have a common language with which to talk to your committee members, then it facilitates the process.
Yes, and we're definitely going to touch on the committee members and others shortly. And I want to say that me personally, even though I'm not as young as I used to be, but I still enjoy the pen to paper and the cursive writing. I'm
Yes,
not
well,
a
there
big
have
fan of
done
the keyboard.
studies that say that there are some benefits to actually using pen to paper as opposed to always keyboarding something.
Yes, I love that. So, in your experience, what gap in academic support did you personally feel compelled to fill with this specific book?
Hmm. Well, I think that what I want to encourage doctoral students to do is, in a sense, take a moment
Hmm.
to, when there's a point at which there's uncertainty, where there's a lack of clarity, where there's confusion, to take a step back. Okay, where am I? Where am I in the process? Do I know what the process is? Is there something that I'm missing? To step back, take a deep breath. I like to say sometimes, clear the fog away, or get below the fog or above the fog, depending on where the fog is. But anyway, have an opportunity to be able to see, get some clarity, and actually see where you are, because taking action just to be acting can sometimes be very counterproductive.
Right. So looking at the framework and me taking a look at your book, your approach is deeply strategic. But what makes your framework different from the traditional just write more advice students often receive?
Well, I think I talked about that a little bit in terms of writing more. I don't know. It's just, for me, it just feels like such a, I don't know, I don't want to say such a dumb thing, but it's not really a dumb thing. But it's like, okay, just because you have more words on paper,
Mm-hmm.
just because you have more sheets of paper, doesn't mean you've made any progress. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is about done.
Mm-hmm.
There's a phrase in the higher ed community, particularly in doctoral programs, that the best dissertation is a done dissertation.
Mm-hmm.
And what qualifies as done? And there are many steps along the way where where a doctoral candidate, a doctoral student, has to make a decision that this is done. This is enough.
Mm-hmm.
I have done what I need to do in order to go on to the next step. So, writing more doesn't necessarily get you done. And as a matter of fact, it might just add to the confusion. So, I guess in a way, I'll just sort of go back and say, my saying is, on some level, my advice is take a breath. That if people tell you to write more, and sometimes you do. I mean, there's like you may be introducing an idea that you need to explore more. You may be trying to describe an outcome, so maybe you need to expand that. But it doesn't mean that you have to just fill up the page with paper. You want what you produce to be meaningful, to be coherent, to meet the need of the moment. If you feel that you actually need to do more in another arena, you can do that in a sense once the dissertation is done. You can go back and expand on things that you have discovered in the process of completing your dissertation. But what will get it done? What is it, in a way, sort of what do you need? What is the minimum, in
Mm-hmm.
a sense? What are the basics that you need to get done? And before doing more writing, think about that. What is done? What can you consolidate? What can you say, okay, this is enough of this. What is my next step, and how can I go to that next step? So how do you align? How do you decide? How do you produce? Those are the questions that you need to sort of go through in terms of looking at the framework.
Good stuff. Now, why is location academically and emotionally so important?
Oh my goodness. Well, be, knowing where you are, it's okay. One of the analogies I use is the highway.
Mm-hmm.
And, sort of one of my personal things is that in general, I don't mind getting lost if I have time, partly because I know next time don't go that way because it's not taking me where I want to go. So, this is one of the reasons why it's important to locate yourself. Where are you in the process? who is it? What is it that needs to be done to get you from this entry point to the next exit point so that you can come back at the next entry? Because the dissertation process is a process and there are stages. You've got to complete the doctoral process, involves you completing coursework. It includes taking exams. It means writing a proposal, getting that proposal approved. If you need approval from the IRB. So all of these are processes that you have to complete. So where are you in this process? Have you got, and then in each stage, what is it that you've done? So it's always a matter of, in a way, kind of centering yourself, finding out where you are on this highway. Are you in the right lane? Have you gotten off at the wrong exit? Did you get turned around? What is it? So it's really important to know where you are in the process and where you are, in a sense, in your thinking about what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Good stuff. Now, you teach students to diagnose what's affecting their progress, but what are some of the hidden factors that they rarely recognize?
In terms of their recognition, well, one of the things that I say to anybody thinking about a doctoral program, starting one in particular, or even ones who are already in the process, I always ask, what is the question that you want to answer? Because part of the whole doctoral process is to learn new things or present new information or apply something in a unique way that can be reproduced or shared or whatever it might be. So often the question is much larger than any dissertation can handle. So what is it that you're going to focus on? And I think a lot of times that is what stalls people, because they really do want to ask this bigger question. But the bigger question actually can be a lifetime project. And what we need to do, what a doctoral student needs to do, is focus on a narrow enough area that may give you a part of the answer that will allow you to finish this process and then go on and pursue the bigger question in whatever way makes sense for you. So I think sometimes, because as academics, as intellectuals, as practitioners, we often have very lofty goals.
Mm-hmm.
And we sometimes get frustrated because we can't seem to do what it is that we kind of set out to do or want to do. So being able to focus, narrow down, align, what it is that you're trying to do is really critical.
Good stuff. Now, you have mentioned the word navigate a couple of times in the conversation, and you also touched on highway and location and things of that sort. So you may have already answered it a little, but what does it mean to truly navigate a dissertation rather than simply work on one?
Oh, geez. Well, I think in terms, when I use the word navigate, and you think about the sort of this work on it and navigate it. I guess I think of work as, I guess I would say I wouldn't say just effort, but the um, the energy that is put into working on a doctoral program, on a dissertation in particular. Whereas navigate, I think about, again, you mentioned that I like to think strategically, that when you're navigating, you know where you are, and you know where you're going. You have gathered information about, I don't know how far I can go with this water analogy, but
Mm.
you're aware of which way the water is flowing, what you've got that might be obstacles, what might be things that can assist you, so that navigating means, rather than just working, because so to say, you could be out there in that boat and you could be steady working going nowhere.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're navigating, it means that you're taking in what's going on around you, what resources you have available, where it is that you need help. And you very much have your, I don't know what they call those things, but at any rate, you've got your direction and you're moving ahead.
Now, how do you specifically, or do you have any specific tools where students can actually rebuild trust in themselves after an academic setback?
No, I don't have any particular tools. I think, at least when I say I don't have any particular tools, I mean, one of the things that I offer as an opportunity is the doctoral decision and strategy session,
Mhm.
where where doctoral students can set up an appointment to meet with me and to talk about, identify, to kind of go through the framework, so that at the end of the session, the candidate student has a better idea and has an action plan about what their next steps would be. I think one of the, I would say one of the, I can't think of quite the word, but one of the things that bothers me a lot about doctoral student support programs, dissertation support programs, is that there's sort of this one tool fits all.
Mm.
And I will say, frankly, that one of the difficulties I had in my own building my own coaching practice and deciding how I was going to present my coaching practice was my own, I guess you would say, psychological difficulty with this one thing fits all. It was like I wasn't comfortable with that. I couldn't say, sort of, as we've talked about, write more, or well, you got to work on your methods, and I'll help you with your methodology. um, that's part of the resources that the institution makes available to you, and often the institutions, when I say the institutions, I'm somewhat talking about the actual institution, but the whole dissertation doctoral process is an institution. And so there are pieces of that often are supposed to be assisting you, but they're not.
Mm.
And so identifying what's available to you within your institution is, I guess, what I feel I do as the tool. And that tool varies from place to place, from individual to individual. So I don't say that everybody, after having a session with me, has the same program, because not everybody's the same. People are in different places,
Mhm.
not only in the process, but where they're thinking, their academic disciplines. But there are things about constructing, developing the dissertation that are, somewhat standard. And so trying to facilitate the student being aware of what those are and what's available to them and how they're going to do it and all of that, that I see as the tool. And I think the finished dissertation is a tool because it gives you a framework, it gives you some terminology, it gives you a perspective, and that can be used to talk to people, develop your own plan, decide what you're going to do next.
Now, why and how do students get disconnected from their committee or their institutional support?
Ooh. Well, that can happen for a number of reasons. Um, One, I think, is that there are decisions that we make or sometimes get made for us about who is on your committee.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes who you think or who they think may be helpful to you may not be helpful to you.
Mm.
They may not be a match for you, not only academically, discipline wise, temperament, all of those factors. They may not be a match for you, and they may not be a match for each other, which is why I mentioned earlier sometimes you got to manage your committee. You know, they got different personalities, they got different disciplines, they've got different expectations. And they've also all had very different experiences around even their own research that they bring to the committee. So I think we all have to be careful about who we choose to work with as much as we can. I will just share that I was older, a seasoned professional when I decided to go back and get my doctorate. And so one of the things I did is I had conversations with people in the department I would be in. I was in the sociology department. And I talked to them about the things that I thought I wanted to do research on. And there were three people in particular who I talked to who I knew because I was going to go to school part-time right here in Albany, where I live. I knew some of the faculty and I had these conversations with them. And it was like, well, do you think either you or other people in the department would support my research, even though there wasn't anybody in the department really that had the uh, interest in my topic. So actually, there wasn't anybody on my committee. I did my research on Black women in higher education, and there was nobody on my committee that was involved in higher education. There were no Black women. So on some level, I had to manage my committee. There's also sometimes, here's a handbook. This is what you're supposed to do. And I would hazard a guess that almost every doctoral program has a handbook. Well, what they say in the handbook may not necessarily be what happens.
Oh, wow.
And then faculty may understand something to be one way, but the secretary in the department office says, no, that's not, got to do something else. So there are lots of ways where you can get separated, where you get misinformation, where you get conflicting information. And then there's even the provost office or whoever has, in quotes, final say about degree deferral. They have a whole process that you could actually get separated, like in them final stages. I'll just sort of give a little anecdote about my own experience, but I had to print my dissertation 3 times.
Ooh.
First of all, they said I didn't have the right paper. Then the second time, they said my margins weren't right. So I had to print the thing 3 times, and I had to print it within like 4 days.
Mm.
So, there are all kinds of things. And, somebody might have said, well, my committee signed off and I'm done.
Mhm.
But until the person that confers the degree sign off, you don't have it.
Vote. So, do you choose your own committee, or is your
Well,
committee chosen for
it
you?
depends on the department. Generally speaking, it's sort of a choosing operation. Uh, for me, it was a matter of me asking people if they would be willing to be on a dissertation committee,
Mhm.
because I had been around the academy long enough to hear people say, oh, I got another dissertation, because it is in some cases an extra workload for a faculty person, and it's like, well, I don't want to be bothered with that. So there's that aspect of it. And then sometimes, because you've been a student assistant, or you've done something else with a faculty person, or maybe you've worked on that person's grant, and some of what the work that you've already done is part of their grant program, and you can use the data or whatever. So that person would be a natural to be a member of your committee. So it really depends. It may be that you get one person and they bring in the other people. Usually you have a minimum of 3 people on your committee. There are some departments, some disciplines where you will have more people, but generally speaking, you have 3 people. And depending on the department and your discipline, whether you are finding your own committee members or whether they're sort of finding you. Um, Sometimes it's an advantage to have somebody say, I want to be your dissertation on your dissertation committee, and sometimes that could be a disadvantage. So there's lots of things that can have an impact on whether or not you complete your program, um, with as little stress as possible. There are just all these factors. I don't actually um, do much coaching,
Mhm.
strategizing around committee selection. I guess quite often by the time somebody sees me, they usually had the committee together. But I have spent time, talking with folks about what are the expectations of your committee members. And sometimes those expectations can be conflicting. And that'll be another aspect of getting through the process, and feedback, because your committee is giving you feedback, and they may be giving you feedback independent of each other, and it can be conflicting. So that's another case where you have to negotiate with your committee and get clarification. I mean, it's like, well, it may be conflicting, but maybe it's not. But there has to be a conversation where everybody agrees that what's in the dissertation is what should be in the dissertation. And that as a committee member, I feel like the work that has been done is sufficient.
Hmm. Now, what has been the most powerful transformation you've witnessed for someone using your specific framework?
I don't know. I think for me, at any rate, I mean, I think maybe for the student that I've worked with, often it's major for them. But I think for me, having someone I worked with walk away, I guess what I would say, with a bounce in their step, so to say, that is what's important to me, because when they're feeling relieved, where they're feeling focused, where they're feeling that they can make the next step, that's a success for me. And whether it's big or little,
Mhm.
in a way, I guess you would say it's a little irrelevant, because for them, it's big.
Okay, now you do have a second book, A Real Whole Lot. It carries a different energy. So, how do these two works speak to each other?
Ooh, I think in a way they don't speak to each other.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about it.
A real whole lot is a collection of love letters that my parents, I guess I shouldn't say love letters, but they are love letters, but letters that my parents wrote to each other while my father was in the Army during World War II.
Hmm.
Most of the letters that are published are letters from my father that he sent mostly when he was either in Algiers or fought Versailles in North Africa and in France during World War II, from, I would say, probably late 44, no, probably early 44 to mid um, 45, because my father finished his active duty in not May, November of 45. Um, so it's a memoir.
Mm.
I'm not trying to impart any kind of, I guess I would say, useful information in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that publishing them um, was not only a testament to my parents. My parents had been married 66 years when my father died.
Wow.
Um, it was a testimony to, I guess I just put in general terms, Black love,
Mm-hmm.
that Black men could write about their love for a Black woman, and that this was at the beginning of their relationship. My parents got married in 41. My father got in June of 41. My father was drafted in October of 41, and he was stationed in Mississippi, North Carolina, and a couple of other places. And then he was stationed overseas for a year and a half, 2 years. So it was a period of time when they were newlyweds and were separated. And I'm sure these letters, because my mother kept all these letters. It wasn't until, well, my grandmother decided that, I don't know, I think she got mad with my mother. My grandmother decided to throw them out because
Whoa.
my father would write my mother every day, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day.
Wow.
And so there were only about, note I said only about 200 letters that survived.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes. So I
Wow.
wanted to share that testimony in a way.
Yes.
And actually, I'm in the process of doing a third book, which builds on the love letters, because I wanted to give a fuller picture of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to try and write this fuller story, at the same time, Morgan State University, both my parents went to Morgan State. I also went to Morgan State. Um, Morgan State agreed to take my parents' papers, such as they were, because as my parents moved around, as my siblings and I moved my parents, there was stuff we threw away, not really thinking about them having any archival value or being able to inform us as well as anybody else about these two people who were married for 66 years and did all kinds of wonderful things.
Yes.
Um, so as I started trying to find more things about my mother, having gone through some of those papers and Morgan agreeing to take the papers, archive them, and right now they're going through the organizing process. Um, I began to see things about my parents that I didn't even know, that I don't think any of us knew.
Wow.
I'll just give one example. I asked my brother and my sister, what did my father major in college?
Mm-hmm.
My brother thought political science, and my sister thought business. My father was an English major.
Wow.
And one of the things I always wondered about is that my father knew all these Victorian poems. He would memorize, he had memorized these things. And even when he was old, he could still quote these poems. And I said,
Wow.
how did he know all these Victorian poems? Well, he was an English major. And in 1930s and 40s, we didn't have Tony Cade and Nikki Giovanni. So who was he going to memorize but Victorian poets? So anyway, so I'm in the process of telling what I'm calling this partnership biography about my parents' relationship and the things they did, not only as parents, but as community members, as activists in a different kind of way. So I'm almost up to my whatever in trying to tell that story, which is I guess you would say sort of a sequel to A Real Whole Lot.
I love you. I love that. And that is amazing share. So I'm sure the listeners would be like, wow, that is amazing. And to be married for such a long time and for your dad to be so intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, amazing. So thank you for that awesome share and congratulations on
Thank you.
being able to archive it at Morgan State. So that's amazing in itself.
Yes.
So what is one strategic shift a doctoral student can make today that will immediately change their trajectory?
Immediate.
Is that a such thing?
Well, I guess again, I'll go back. I've said it several times. Is to take a minute, take a breath,
Mm-hmm.
actually situate yourself, locate yourself. Where are you? Where are you in the process? Where are you within the process? Is Are you grappling with a concept? Are you trying to consolidate comments? What is it that you're trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
That it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't cost you anything. As a matter of fact, it may benefit you to take, I don't know, whatever chunk of time you need to take to figure out where you are. That will make all the difference in terms of what your next steps are and how effective those next steps are.
Mm-hmm. What do you wish institutions would do differently to help doctoral students finish?
Ooh. Mm. Institutions. I don't know. I mean, one of the things I have said is that, when you get admitted to a doctoral program, they have confidence in you that you're going to complete the program. So they have confidence in your ability. Now, they may not always communicate that. And maybe that might be the thing that they need to do, that faculty that are involved with you, that you can encourage, they can encourage critical thinking, critical analysis, but that it to be able to do that in such a way that it doesn't derail students or make them doubt their ability, their skills in order to complete this process.
Now, what does finishing well mean to you beyond simply submitting the dissertation?
Well, finishing well means getting through the entire process, recognizing that, okay, you've done the dissertation, but there are all these other little steps, as well as, to a certain extent, you making a psychological transition. Because normally, minimally, you're involved in this process for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us have done it full time, so that's the 3 or 4 years, and then some of us have done it part time, and it's taken many years. And so when you have finished, it's like, well, celebrating that you've done it, recognize what you've done, that it's done, and that you get to celebrate that and make a transition. That there are next steps. For some, there's pursuing an academic career and continuing to do the research that you've done with your dissertation. For others, it's kind of a reward, a recognition that, yes, you can do this, you've done it, and that it's an external evaluation or reward or recognition of your ability to negotiate this whole process. So finishing it well is, just taking it in and being able to make a transition onto the next thing you want to do, and that there, in a sense, is life after dissertation.
Love that. Now, what legacy do you hope the finished dissertation leaves in the academic world?
Well, I think the legacy would be, I get the thought that came to mind is happier doctoral students. That I had a conversation with someone who read the draft, and her comment was that the tone that I take with the finished dissertation is that it's not about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about the process. And so what she said to me, because she's not involved in the academy at all, she said, this is a book that anybody could read about any project that they're involved in. So I guess in a way, what would be a wonderful legacy would be that framework that I developed, particularly for the finishing the dissertation, is a framework that could be used in any situation, any project, any, whether it's a big project or a little project, short term, long term, or, in a way, just living life. That if someone could, stop and say, okay, I need clarity, I need to align, I need to reduce, I need to produce, to take those steps and apply them in any situation where there's something you're trying to accomplish. So I think I guess I think I would like that to be my legacy, that this is a framework that goes beyond the finished dissertation.
Well, good stuff. Now, is there any additional advice or information you would like to impart on the listeners this evening?
Not in particular. I just sort of, and I mentioned this earlier, one of my basic questions to any doctoral student is, what is the question you want to answer?
Mm.
If you don't have a question, my advice is do not start a doctoral program,
Oh,
because
wow.
you will only end up in that doctoral program forever because you don't have a question that you're answering.
How do they get to that?
Say that again.
How do they get to that?
Well, it has to be their own curiosity.
Mm.
um, a situation that they find themselves in, that they think there's got to be a different way to do this, or there has to be an approach that can work. There's some knowledge out there that can be applied in this situation. Where is that knowledge? Where is that strategy? What can inform this? As I said, I wanted to look at the careers. The question I wanted to answer, which of course I already knew,
Mm-hmm.
is why aren't there more Black women college presidents? But,
Mm.
if I say racism and sexism, well, and, it's like, well, what does that mean?
That's another
But what I
interview in
ended
itself.
up doing was looking at the progression of the careers of Black and white women college presidents. What were the positions that people had before they became a college president? And at least, I'll just share one thing about my conclusion was that Black and white women who are in the academy have very similar career paths to the presidency. So, on some level, you can say that racism was not a significant factor in terms of the trajectory. But there's a whole bunch of other things that go into what are the jobs that women get, and then are the jobs different? How are they different? Like I found, for example, that Black women had on average, and it was a significant difference, which is like, really, they had one more job to the presidency than white women. So
Mm.
my conclusion, of course, is that Black women got to prove themselves. That's why they got to have one more job than white women.
Wow. So that's another interview you have to come back on and do.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Kane, please share where listeners can purchase the finished dissertation and connect with your work and follow you across your digital platforms.
Okay. Well, at this point, I have the website doctoralsuccess.com, and you can go there to get links to the vendors who sell the finished dissertation. There's also on the website an opportunity for you to be in touch with me directly about anything related. And there's also information about the doctoral decision and strategy session and what that is and how to schedule that if that's something that you choose to do in terms of working with me one on one.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kane. Tonight, you have given our listeners more than information. You have given them structure, courage, and a renewed sense of possibility. Your work reminds us that the dissertation is not just an academic milestone, it is a journey of discipline, identity, and intellectual maturity. Your framework brings order to confusion, direction to uncertainty, and hope to scholars who are determined to finish strong, or as you said, get it done. Your voice is a gift to the academic world, and your clarity is a lifeline to those navigating one of the most demanding scholarly experiences. So, to our listeners, if you are a doctoral student, an advisor, an educator, or someone who simply believes in the power of structural guidance, visit doctoralsuccess.com and secure your copy of the finished dissertation. This has been a distinguished, elevated, and deeply meaningful conversation on Hindsight Media Radio 103.5 FM, where there's always something good to talk about. And Dr. King, thank you for sharing your brilliance with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, everyone, visit our website at www.hindsightmediaradio.com. Tap into a world of vibrant music, dynamic daily shows, and fabulous interviews that keep our listeners inspired, informed, and entertained. Until we meet again, let's continue to give the world something good to talk about. Good night.